Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Got Douglas Richards. He's an author of a book called The Cure. Has an interesting thesis, if you will, idea about the type of people that are attracted to politics. And Doug, before we get into your book and into your view, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I have a master's degree in molecular biology, which is, genetic engineering is another name for it. And then I was a biotechnology executive for many years. I was director of biotech licensing at Bristol Myers Squibb, and then an executive at several biotechs.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about your book and what made you write it.
Yeah, so The Cure it's fictional. So I write techno-thrillers, kind of in the realm of Michael Crichton, kind of fast-paced thrillers, but they're based on accurate science. And so for The Cure, I was reading about research showing scientists were uncovering differences in the brains of psychopaths and non-psychopaths. And I was fascinated by this. I was thinking, well, if you could see differences in the brain structure of psychopaths and non-psychopaths, could you cure psychopathy? And would you want to? And would psychopaths want to be cured? And all these questions. So I started doing extensive research, and I called up guys who actually go into prisons and conduct MRI brain scans on psychopathic murderers and rapists, and learned something that the most fascinating thing I learned was that 1% of the population can be classified as psychopathic. So, I had always thought that psychopaths were typically serial killers.
Yeah. But apparently, obviously not 1% of the population are serial killers, or we'd have a much bigger...
Right. So it's not that at all. I mean, yeah.
So it's like there's a range. There's like, there's a range of one's issue with food or one's issue with money or whatever. There's a range in terms of psychopathic behavior.
Exactly right. So there's something called the Hare psychopathy checklist, which experts use to identify this. But it's just a host of behaviors, and what, by the way, 20% of prison populations are psychopaths, and probably about half of violent crimes are committed by psychopaths. So it's very true that they do tend to be serial killers, but that's not always the case. So they're classified as being utterly selfish. They have no conscience or empathy. They're ruthless and predatory. So basically, they're the wolf, and they see the rest of the world as sheep.
Kind of a predatory view of mankind.
Absolutely. I mean, they're the predator. I mean, we're there to be used, to be taken advantage of, to be fleeced, basically. And they have no compassion. But on the flip side, they can be incredibly charming, smooth, brilliant liars and manipulators. They never take blame for anything. They have no shame or embarrassment. So if you catch them in a lie, where you and I would be flustered and would be embarrassed, they're not at all. They just move on and tell an even bigger lie to cover it up. And so, who does that sound like? I mean, in terms of, people who are utterly shameless, brilliant liars, and never take blame.
It sounds like both Ted Bundy and Ted Kennedy.
Exactly right. I mean, think about Anthony Weiner. Think about this guy.
I
talk about shameless.
I can't because I get physically nauseated, so I can't think about him. But I know where you're going. The guy is shameless about it. He obviously, if he sat down and honestly answered questions, in such a test, that guy would be overwhelming psychopath.
Well, you'd have to be an expert to make that diagnosis. But, I tell you, if you and I did the things that he did, we would never go out in public again. But This guy instead runs for mayor.
Right.
Yeah, so...
And continues the same activity while running for mayor.
Yeah, absolutely. So 1% of the population is classified psychopathic. It turns out in one study, 3% of business executives were considered to be psychopathic. So, it's definitely enriched in business world, as you might expect. I mean, you see some of these guys who get ahead. They're ruthless, they're brilliant, they're charismatic. They're good liars and manipulators, and so that's not entirely surprising. I've never read a study among the political class. I'm not sure there is a study, but I have to believe that it's even higher than 3% among the business executives.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. My producer asked a question. What's the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a great question, and a lot of people don't make any distinction because the behaviors are very, very similar, and even some experts don't. But the real top guys, they think of it this way, that psychopaths are more born and sociopaths are more made. it's not so clear cut, but the bottom line is a psychopath was a psychopath from an early age. I mean, their parents kind of knew something was going on. They're torturing small animals, or they're bullies. I mean, sociopaths, it could be, they were raised in a mob family, let's imagine, or they had horrible parents, whatever, and they become a ruthless mob enforcer, but they could still love their own family. That's the difference. Psychopaths have no loyalty or love for anybody but themselves. So their family is basically just a possession to them. They could walk away, wouldn't faze them a bit. I mean, think Casey Anthony. I mean, her daughter was missing and killed, and she didn't report it for a month. She was out partying with her boyfriend, didn't care at all. Yes.
It's almost like she was liberated, in fact.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
free at last. No baby shackling me any longer. I mean, that's how she came across.
Talk about cold, callous, ruthless, but I mean that's what it is. So sociopaths is maybe a little bit more environmental. Psychopaths is just you're just cold, soulless kind of human being.
Yeah, Douglas E.Richards. He is author of several books. You need to check out his website, DouglasERichards.com. DouglasERichards.com. And so you ought to go ahead and roll up your sleeves and do some research on the percentage in politics, because I would bet it's multiples of that 3% in business.
No, I would totally agree with you. And it's interesting. So I mentioned that the differences in the brains. So just to give you a couple examples, if I were to hook electrodes up to you and show you a picture of a woman getting brutally beaten, the emotional centers of your brain would light up. But for psychopaths, not so much. I mean, they really don't have emotional centers. They really don't make connections to other human beings. So that's how they're ruthless and callous and just don't care about anybody but themselves. They really don't have those emotional connections. And they're also fearless. So if I showed you, something really scary, your heart would race a little bit. You'd have a teeny bit of moisture on your skin from sweat. Psychopaths, not at all. So they're fearless and they don't make emotional connections, which is a horrible combination. Because, one of the things that anxiety does for us is prevent us from doing, risky behavior, impulsive behavior that hurts other people. We're worried about getting caught or worried about the consequences or worried about how other people would take it. If you're totally fearless and totally without conscience, it's a really bad combination.
Yeah. Okay, I got to wrap it up real quickly. The Cure, kind of give us your pitch on that real quick.
Yeah, so it's a woman who has a devastating encounter with a psychopath as a young girl, and that's the prologue. So if you don't want to see something pretty hard to take, skip the prologue, and you can still enjoy the rest of the book. But she dedicates her life to studying these monsters, and then somebody comes to her and says, "I have a cure for this, I think." And she'd have to go outside the law in order to do it, to kind of illegally give it to inmates and see if it works without their consent. And psychopaths don't want to be cured because they're highly narcissistic. They don't think there's anything wrong with themselves. And that's the last thing they would want. So you'd have to force it on them. So there's a whole host of issues. And it turns into more science fictional elements. And the critical reaction has been quite good so far. So you can get that in any bookstore or online. And if anybody wants to friend me, I'm on Facebook at Douglas E. Richards Author.
DouglasERichards.com. Make sure you check him out. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, so when we come back, much more for you. Do check out DouglasERichards.com. Also check out US Daily Review, and while there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter.